yourself or in a bathing suit, you must not be intelligent. And you're just this, and you're just a pinup, and you're just a stereotypical big busted blonde who can't, it was a lot of that stigma, pigeonholing you. So you had to work really hard to get good film opportunities. So I know that was a really long ramble to answer your one poor little question, but it's complicated. It's complicated. What might work for me might not work for someone else, but when young girls ask me about, especially like I say, Playboy, it's a whole other world, but about modeling, and I say it depends on the kind of employee you want and how hard you're willing to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I know that there'll probably be people in here who would like to speak to Erika about the Playboy and the Baywatch thing, so I'm going to slightly just not touch on that and let you guys do that. What I wanted to touch on was the different kind of roles that I've seen you in. Like, you did Beverly Hillbillies,
Yeah.
which Ellie Mae was, I thought she was great, and I remember listening to you on panel when you were talking about the take that you had, where you had to go into the wardrobe. You got it wrong. Everybody absolutely hated you. So,
Sure.
what's it like being on a set, doing something like that?
That movie, that was also, I feel like, back in the days where they were still throwing money around a little bit more than, in terms of the film industry, it's changed so much, and things now have become, unless we're talking, A+ multi-million-dollar big studio movies, people always try to get things done on the cheap, like, everything is sponsored, it's ultra low budget. I love when you get that, by the way, we want you to go for this movie, ultra low budget, that's the first thing, and you're like, but back in those days, things were still just really sweet, and the studio, really, it was very important for them, because that series, I grew up watching that series when it was already, reruns. I'm 50, no problem saying my age ever, but even for me, when I grew up watching the show, it was already an old show. So the point being, it was beloved by so many people. They wanted to take care of those characters. It was really important because a lot of people are, they get upset. We get protective over those characters we love, right? So, so they were careful. So that set, the characters, the cast, it was painstaking to really kind of get it right. And I really had some conversations with the director on how to modernize Ellie Mae, but to keep her true and authentic to Donna Douglas. And it was a little tricky. We had a little, there were some too modern, too risque, and I thought, let's not tarnish this character though, right? She's still wide-eyed and just a sincere, ingenuous girl, you know what I mean? She was sexy, but she didn't know it. That was all accidental. Do you know what I mean? It just was because that's what nature gave her. That's what her mama gave her. And that was like, and that was the attitude behind it. She was just a tomboy. So keeping that truth was so important. Yeah, but it was great. I got probably bitten and attacked by every animal on that show except for the bear. Nothing severe, but I have all these different crazy stories. And I love animals, thank God. So that helped. Yeah, it was fun. Penelope Spheris was a ball buster for a director. She's a woman who really knew what she wanted. But we got along really well. So I was a sponge. The cast, phenomenal. I mean, Dabney Coleman and Lily Tomlin and Cloris Leachman and so many brilliant comedians that I would just go to work wide-eyed every day and try and learn from them as much as possible. Yeah, it was great. It was my favorite experience.
Personally, I love that film. I remember going to the cinema watching that one. But there was a picture of you behind in Baywatch, and you were in that stuff, was it 4 or 5 years?
2.
Oh, was it 2 years? Oh gosh, I'm getting my maths completely wrong in my head. I've seen a figure in my head.
Yeah.
What was the experience like working on that?
We did the show when, I don't know if you guys ever remember, we had Sunday night movies. So back in the day, the major networks would compete with each other, and they would have these 2-hour movies. Baywatch was one of those 2-hour movies. And if it did well, they'd call them backdoor pilots. If it did really well, then they would make it into a TV series. So first we did a 2-hour movie, Panic at Malibu Pier. Panic at Malibu Pier, I think, it was called. And then we were on a very conservative network. We were on NBC, which for us was like the most conservative network on air, which a lot of people don't know the sort of backstory. The first year of Baywatch, we had to do everything by the book to get sponsorship. The suits were regulation suits. It was actually supposed to be a very serious look at lifeguarding. Because, you know, we have the lawyer shows and the doctor shows, right? The cop shows, but nothing on lifeguarding. So the idea behind it from the creator was it's a very serious business, lifeguarding. People live and die by, you know, what the lifeguards do for them out there. So that was the idea behind the show. When we went, that was the first year, so we were the guinea pigs. We shot in the winter time. I remember shooting with Billy Warlaw. We were supposed to be frolicking in the ocean, and it was the record coldest day of the year. And the water was so cold, our lips were so blue, and we looked so miserable. No matter how hard we tried to fake it, they couldn't use the footage. And it was that time that they said, maybe we need to get a water tank. We were, you know, we shot on days that were so overcast, which it often is in California, unless it's dead summer. If you're shooting January, February, March, it's overcast. So they would bring in these big Kino lights to light up the beach and make it look really sunny. And then the makeup people would come at us with the sprayers of freezing cold water. They tried to make it warm, but it wouldn't stay, you know, warm in these big containers. So we're out there with just goosebumps all over, and they would come to make you look sweaty with the sprayers, and you would just die inside. Because you're like, no! So a lot of it was absolutely movie magic. Yeah, and that's when David Hasselhoff and the producers pulled together. I know David put in a lot of his own money, and they found a syndicated channel that wanted to pick up the show again. And that's when Baywatch became Baywatch, because we had less rules. So the necklines plunged. The big, you know, the big booty bottoms became Brazilian cut and musical montages, and it really became what it evolved into, right? So after that season, I left. But we had a happier time, I feel like, that season. They wrote for my character more, which was really fun for me, because I got to get the acting chops that I wanted. And we got to shoot in the sun. So that was really nice. And then they went on. You know, they went on to, I don't know, 11 seasons or something. Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
It was 11.
That's what I
The
thought.
last two were in Hawaii, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
I think we have a super fan.
I used to watch it back in Poland.
Oh,
Very cool.
Poland, nice. Yeah.
I know that you were saying about the weather. I don't know if anybody else knows this, but when you're in Chasers, you seem to have no luck with weather because you had to pretend that you weren't sweating.
Right.
So they had to, if you want to tell that story, because I found this hilarious when I was watching it.
Yeah, so we shot Chasers all over North and South Carolina, just on the cusp of summer. So if you know anything about the South, it is extraordinarily humid, plus the temperatures. And then we shot, it was a road picture, so we were always traveling in that movie, even on camera. We shot inside a van. A lot of the time, it was like 113 degrees Fahrenheit inside. And Dennis Hopper was rather, you know, he was eccentric, and he had his visions for that movie, and he wanted the guys, Billy McNamara and Tom Berenger, just sweaty and drenched. He did not want my character to perspire at all. So inside the van were planted these little handheld fans everywhere, and in between takes, and it's not luxurious, believe me, in between takes, I was supposed to hold up the fans and try to keep myself from sweating, okay? This was not easy, it was so irritating. So it was, stop, you know, cut, wipe the sweat away, and I'm like, I'm sorry! You know, it's so bloody hot, it's like the Mojave Desert inside the van, outside in the south with the summer, and so it was, he was so funny. He was quite eccentric, and he had his very, very specific vision.
Because of course women don't sweat.
Right.
Men don't.
Right. Right. Good Lord. Yeah.
But I know that there'll be a lot of people who will have specific questions here, please. So what I'm going to do is throw it over to
Yeah,
somebody else. If you have a question, please put your hand up. Straight over there from there.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Erika.
Hi.
happy International Women's Day to start off with.
Thank you.
And I can just say that you played a few characters of interest, which I particularly enjoyed, was the lifeguard and the convict characters that you played.
Yeah.
My question that I would like to put forward to you is, if you could create a character for yourself, or a story for film on TV, what would that be and why?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Ooh, are you a producer?
Yeah. Do you have a few hours? Well, I'll tell you this. It's really funny. I remember one of the round robins. So that's basically when you go from table to table to table when you're promoting something with press from everywhere. So you go around, and I remember somebody asked me, it was really funny the way he posed the question was almost like, you know, your characters are so diverse. He said, what are you looking for? And I said, diversity.
Acting.
I mean, you know, because that's every actor's dream, is to play as many different kinds of roles as possible. So if I could just create something, it would be somehow to show the arc of a character maybe in a complete evolvement. It would be really great to take a woman, there was one movie I did, I don't want to digress too much, but in a movie called The Opponent, where this young girl was a ring girl, right, chewing bubble gum and in the bathing suit with the sign and in an abusive relationship, who ended up falling in love with the sport of boxing and becoming a boxer and truly training, not fluffy, just really training. I loved that because it was this involvement of this woman, this girl, into a woman. So if I were to have a story like that, it would definitely be an evolvement, you know, maybe to show some kind of an underdog situation that she could rise above and evolve to, and maybe also inspire other people along the way, bring them all with her, something like that.
I hope that answers your question. I like that.
Now it's gonna bug me though, all day.
So that's the back to you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Hi, I'm Nick.
Hi.
Pleased to meet you. I just want to ask a question about Under Siege.
Yeah,
It was a completely different sort of film,
yeah.
watching that one. And what was it like basically working with Steven Seagal, and how did you feel that character? Because I thought that was a really, really good film. Like, it was one of my favourites, you know.
Oh, thank
I love
you.
Baywatch the bits, but I really enjoyed Under Siege. And just want to know what you thought of that particular role, and did
Yeah.
that bring you on as an actor more? Did that role kind of a bit more?
That role, it was actually really cool how that came about. It was written as a much smaller role
Yeah.
and a kind of a bit more of a throwaway, and what I felt really proud of, because a lot of auditioning for that role, and that was one of the movies besides the Beverly Hillbillies where they actually did good old-fashioned screen testing. So what that means is you go through the auditions, you meet the casting people, then you go in and you meet the director and you meet the writers and maybe the producers, but then they bring you into an actual set, a studio, and you get your hair and makeup done, and they bring in a real film camera and you actually audition that way. Before they invest in you and put you in this big screen, they need to make sure that they're really gonna be happy.
Yeah.
So, it was written as a smaller part, and as we went along, they were happy with what they were seeing, and they kept coming and saying, we're gonna write some more, we're gonna write some more. So that was actually an evolving
Yeah.
character.
There seems to be a lot of chemistry between you and Steven Seagal. I know it's on the screen though, it seems to be very...
Which is so
natural.
nice, thank you,
It's so
that's
nice, yeah.
super complimentary, because, you know, it's not easy sometimes, you know, and I worked my tail off though, you know, I was so in awe of Tommy Lee Jones,
Yeah.
because I'm a huge Tommy Lee Jones fan, yeah, and Gary Busey, as nutty as he is, he's a brilliant actor, and so to be able to go to work and work with them, I was so nervous. I wrote every day. I wrote on my character to stay in character. I journaled as the girl Jordan Tate. That's one of the things that I did. And I wrote as if I was on a ship. And that's how I stayed in character. So I really worked hard. And as I said, it was working because they were like, maybe we'll do this, maybe we'll do that. So that was cool. It was a difficult shoot. We were in Mobile, Alabama for 3 months.
Right.
There were about... with all the extras, I don't know, like 1,500 men, and I think 6 of us women, including the crew.
Right.
In fact, I'll tell you, there's a little, there's a piece in the movie where you'll see they're in a big conference room, and there's a whole panel of the higher-ups that when we're in the gun battle,
Yeah,
that
yeah, I was
Stephen.
listening to it.
So there's a woman in that who has a blonde hair and like in a roll, and she goes over and she shows a book to someone, and that's actually our script supervisor. Her name is Drew. We did not have a lot of women there, so they used her as one of the characters.
Standing by.
So it was a tough shoot. It was a tough shoot, but I learned how to be diplomatic in my 20s and take care of myself and stand up for myself and learn how to do it in a way that wasn't offensive. And it's a skill that I think, especially I think everybody could use, quite frankly, from middle
Was that pivotal
school.
moment as an actress then to actually bring that role to, you know, to newer roles that kind of developed your character in a more defined
Say that
way?
again, the beginning of your question.
To develop your character in a more defined way from that particular role you have, you know, the siege, you know, working with Tommy Jones and, you know.
Yeah, but what's the question? Sorry.
How did that define you as an actor?
Oh, how did that define me as an
Yeah.
actress? You know, I don't know if anything defines you, because it's all an involvement, right?
Mhm.
So, if I feel like if something defines you, it's definitive, right?
Yeah.
It's almost done, or a label, and so,
Maybe
I-
developing.
developing,
that,
right,
developing
yeah,
that, it's not-
absolutely, how,
yeah.
so everything is a strength.
Yeah.
Everything, even when you fall on your face, it's a strength, you know what I mean, seriously, because, in fact, I almost did, and they kept that shot in the movie. We were in, I was in really, really high heels, and we were getting off the helicopter, and we were filming on a ship, a real ship. It was a decommissioned, museum.
Wow.
And that's how we shot for 3 months. You had to learn to duck because it's very, very, everything's very shallow and short and metal. And I tripped when I got off the helicopter. My stiletto heel got stuck in a plank. And we're all marching along and we're all kind of going off each other's timing. And when my shoe got stuck and I almost fell over, everybody stopped because we were supposed to go together. And that's what they kept in the movie. Because it's real, you know what I mean? So I think every experience that you have is a life of its own, and you take that with you to the next one. And you just build on it and build on it. Yeah, I told you I'm chatty. So if you have a question for me, I will go on.
Hear some casts talk about what it's like working with the rest of the cast throughout. You know, 'cause you're working sometimes for like 16, 18 hours a day with the same people. For Baywatch, was it kind of, did you create like really strong bonds, or was it kind of more kind of colleagues? Or,
That was one of my, that's a great question. That was one of my favorite things and saddest parts about leaving Baywatch, is that it really was like a family. It was like, first of all, what I found, like within the military or, you know, first responders, firemen, and police, just all of it, you know, there's a camaraderie, like a brotherhood, a sisterhood, and I feel like that's kind of the same feeling the lifeguards have with each other. We had a lot of lifeguards, actual lifeguards, working with us. We were a family. The crew, I remember our cameraman, I called him Uncle Eddie, and then our DP was Uncle Jimmy, and I mean, we were like a big family. So the cast, everybody, you spend that much time together, you know? Deadly if you don't like each other, I'll tell you. But we all got along really, really well. You don't really have much of a social life. In that show, it was an hour show, right? Because we had an A story and a B story. And so even for filming, if it took us 10 days to shoot an episode, you know, outside, you're limited, because you can only shoot till the sun goes down, right? But then you could go and shoot inside for all the other storylines until an hour, right? So the hours are up and you can't work actors and crew anymore. So you would go from maybe one set to another set on that show. You go do the outdoor work and then, you know, switch over when it's dark to do the other work. And yeah, it's a lot of long hours. So you do form bonds.
you kind of see David and stuff, you kind of sums yourself up a little bit. Was he like that back in those days?
Super funny. Fun guy, big practical joker, always. Big. He's a big personality. He's very a colorful character. I remember David would always try to do practical jokes. He could be doing a scene where it was going to be a teary scene, and you know, they're gonna come in real close and you're crying. You pop up behind the camera and make some horrible face at you, make you laugh, ruin the shot, and then you have to go and get into that space all over again, you know, pull your hair before you go on a set, camera's rolling. Yeah, super fun. And he makes fun of himself, which I love, you know. Exactly, he's just, he's fun. He's a fun guy.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, first of all the best to all the women on International Women's Day.
That's nice of you,
And
thank you.
nice to see you again.
Thank
And
you.
I wanted to ask, how was it working on the Tales from the Crypt, and how did you get along with Corey Feldman? I've seen him last year, and he's like really, really quirky character. So I was wondering, how was it working with him?
Yeah, Corey Feldman. Oh, we got along great. You know that. I had a couple scenes with Corey. He's a sweetheart. Very likable, super approachable. You know, no big ego about him. Super friendly. That was fun. It was difficult to shoot in a good way, though. Let me be careful with my words. With Dennis Miller, because he's so funny, that it just got to the point where it was like, stop it. Because the crew's getting mad, you know, you're trying to get a shot, and by the 10th time, you're just his jokes, and I love his dry sense of humor, we're so funny, and when you get tired, you know, when you get kind of punch drunk, when you're so tired, you just get silly. Oh God, it was really bad, where you're just, you know, when you get in trouble, you're in school or something, and you're laughing, you can't stop laughing, and people are getting mad. That's how it was all the time on the set for Tales from the Crypt. It was really hard. I finally had to say, stop. We just don't be funny anymore. We have to get this. I want to go home. You know? Yeah, it was, but it was fun. I was a big Tales from the Crypt fan, the series.
It was brilliant show, but it was next to impossible to watch it in my home country. It was like really, really late at night, around midnight. I was young, and always my parents would tell me, like, you can't stay up.
Sure. No DVRs then.
Oh, no.
No. No.
So
That's
much
right.
easier these days.
Yes, it is. That's true.
Are there any more questions?
Can I ask Erika, obviously Baywatch is known for the slow motion scenes as well. As
Yeah.
an actress, when you saw you had a slow motion scene coming up, how did you prepare for that? And
Well, you don't really prepare. It's one of those most awkward things in the world because it's virtually impossible to run in slow motion. So you do feel rather ridiculous. And literally they kind of will walk you through it because the truth of the matter is they really did need it to be just the right speed, right? Between what they're doing with the camera and how they need it to look. It's tricky. If you go too fast, they can't do it. But if you go too slow, they can't do it. So you just try it until it works, honestly. You know, they set a mark, and if they have you say, I'm going to be at the number 2, and if I'm the camera, and they're filming, and they say, action, if you're coming too fast, they'll just stop. They'll just stop you and say, nope, I need it more, you know, half a beat slower, and you just try to kind of figure it out. Not easy, actually. It's funny, we did, for the movie, the Baywatch movie with Dwayne Johnson and Zac Efron, they did a big to-do in Los Angeles for it. For the opening, they had a bunch of events. And they did a slow motion race for people in Los Angeles. So all these people showed up in different Baywatch garb, and it was hysterical. Men dressed up in the bathing suit. It was just crazy. It was such a crazy time. And they did a literal slow motion Baywatch run race in the middle of downtown LA. It was pretty funny to watch. You just made me remember that. That was really funny.
Right, I'm known for doing stuff that's a little bit quirky, so I'm sorry about doing this, putting you on the spot, Erika, but would anybody be up from this panel to walk back to the main hall?
In slow motion.
Slow motion. Do? Of course. I knew I liked you. Who's up for it? Show of hands, who would actually do that?
You have to do it with me. I'm not doing it.
I don't know where the costume.
I knew I like the look at you. Who'll do it?
I'll
You
do
have
it.
to
Can we get a few, we need a few people. Just how often can you say that you ran behind Baywatch Babe in slow motion?
Yeah, but you have to do it too.
I'm doing it. I'm totally up for that.
That's good.
I
Nice.
could be on Baywatch.
All right, do we have more questions? Yeah.
If you could depict a real person that you
it have to be female?
No?
Because, I mean, again, come back to me in 4 hours, let me think about this one. God, a great woman in history, oh, there's so many brilliant women, oh my goodness, I don't know, it would have to be, I think, someone who paved the way for other women, for sure, and so many of those stories, maybe a suffragette or, oh God, I don't know, that's a great question. That's a really great question, I don't know if I can answer it. It would have to be someone who went through a lot. You know, I feel like, I just watched a documentary on Amelia Earhart, and I've seen some various pieces of her, but I would love to see her story done really more in depth. And the mystery behind her death, I don't think, in my humble opinion, was much of a mystery. I think it was a pretty brutal ending for her. I would like to see more her personal life, her, God, you know, her innovative mind, I mean, to do what she did. I'd like to dive into maybe her story more on the personal side, you know.
If you make it, just make it credit for you.
Okay. I will do it.
Okay, that was a goodie. How about a baddie? Any baddie?
A baddie like a villain, you mean?
Yeah, like Elizabeth Bathory. Does anybody know about her?
She was an inspiration for the Dracula.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Thank you. Yes, Elizabeth
Oh.
Bathory is one of the 3 main instigators of the vampire movement. And for those of you who do know me, I'm obsessed with vampires.
Same, I'm in.
Oh, Elizabeth Bathory.
That's who it is. That's who I would play.
I would totally love to play her.
Right?
She apparently, legend has it that she had a hairbrush, a dancer torturer. Apparently, she whacked somebody with a hairbrush because the maid was hurting her too much, and the blood went on her hand, but she whacked it off and said, make sure it looks more youthful. So I'm not going to get into it because there's younger people who will talk about it.
Yeah.
She's incredible. She's
Oh.
very interesting, isn't
This
she?
was made in blood of virgins, apparently.
Apparently.
Oh,
Very
it
true.
gets better.
Wow.
She
It's documented
died
stuff, isn't it?
being encased in the wall.
Sorry?
Apparently she died being encased in the wall of
Wow.
a castle.
Do you know what?
What's
I
her
read
last
that.
name?
I don't know how you pronounce it in Hungarian, but I say Elizabeth Bathory. So
Bathory?
Yes, I think
So if I look her up, I
I'll
will.
talk to you later.
Yeah.
She's awesome. Like,
Okay,
she's
that's who
sick,
I would like to play.
but she is awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, Vlad the Impaler, her, and there's one other person,
She's
isn't
been
there?
playing with Pitt in a Hammer film.
Huh?
Wasn't that character played or based on in a Hammer horror film years ago? I think it was Ingrid Pitt that played it.
Someone just came by and actually told me about those films too. That's interesting, to have horror films. Maybe.
Oh.
Tell them you'll have to call them back. Now, come on. My phone's off, yours can be off.
Panel etiquette, everybody! You should have answered it.
I know.
You should have answered it. Any more questions for Erika, ladies and gentlemen?
What's been your favourite memory from what you've done previously? Like,
Of the ones that I've played,
the ones, the characters that you've played, what's been your greatest memory on set?
I have 2 that are opposite scales in terms of budget and big and little experiences, but Beverly Hillbillies was my big favorite to play. And then there was a small movie, the one I was talking about, playing the ring girl and the boxer, called The Opponent. And that was a real, like, down and dirty, nitty gritty. I did my own fighting. We had no stunt doubles. We had that was really hardcore. So I trained for about 3 or 4 months fighting. And I would say my favorite moment came after the movie when I bravely snuck into a Q&A screening of the movie. And I thought, you're asking for it, so I hid in the back just to see what the reaction would be. And one of the people, there to watch wasn't familiar with any of my work before, so they just said, is the actress that was hired for this movie, is she really a boxer? And that was like, yes, okay, that like made my day, because that was, it's a hard sport. I really got into it. I loved it for a long time after that. And so that was my favorite moment. The moment came after the making of that film, to see that it had paid off. Yeah. Come on, more questions.
We've got possibly time for one more, but it is actually coming to the end of the panel. I was just
Okay.
gonna jump in
quick question. Oh,